Hey, you believers, non-believers, unaffiliated believers, sort of believers, and even you think I'm a believers, welcome. My non-university unstudents, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. This is part 4 in my series called Sciency Stuff. Today's title is The Naked Thing in the Moon, and I'm going to get to that shortly, but I want to give you first a reflection on culture. Dissociation. In his personal and brilliant book, White Guilt, How Blacks and Whites Together Destroyed the Promise of the Civil Rights Era, Black Professor Shelby Steele chronologues how dissociation is incrementally dismantling traditional American culture. Dissociation is defined as disconnection from something or someone. Dissociation is what we're watching daily in America. Man, I read White Guilt 9-10 months ago, but recently while I was out washing my Mini Cooper, I was still thinking through the implications of Steele's thesis. And it made me wonder, where's this headed? Where are we headed? Well, if I told you 25 years ago that we would today be eliminating personal pronouns in the House of Representatives, you would have suspected I was smoking crack. Or if I had told you 20 years ago that Americans would today be calling for police departments to be defunded, you would have thought I was writing science fiction. But here we are. Traditional culture is incrementally, drip, 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 being eroded. Dissociation. When I was a kid, the hippies were persuading culture that intercourse outside of marriage was no big deal. Dissociation. When I was a teen in the 1970s, Madalyn Murray O'Hair was arguing before judges that prayers to God was an oppressive practice that should be outlawed in schools. Dissociation. Abortion? Legalize it. After all, it's merely unborn fetal tissue. Then, while I was a full professor 6 years ago, the Supreme Court, straight from their high-fiber colons, pulled out the Obergefell ruling, a ruling that asserted that the U.S. Constitution positively gave homosexuals the right to marry. Of course, the Constitution never mentions the word homosexual. But what was SCOTUS doing? Bowing their hearts to cultural dissociation. By the way, there is a way to make a new law. It's called legislation, not judicial fiat. And when I argued in my classes that Obergefell would lead both to sanctioned pedophilia and incestuous marriages, I had students laugh at me. Rybarczyk, you're just being hyperbolic. It'll never go that far. I later learned that students behind my back even called me a homophobe for suggesting such crazy possibilities. Well, guess what? Ongoing dissociation, the cause du jour. And you may know this, but in September of 2020, California's Governor Newsom signed legislation, SB 145, that lessened the penalties for pedophilia. No, it didn't legalize pedophilia, but yes, dissociation. It did ease the sentencing requirements for pedophilia. And when California lawmakers wrote it, SB 145 was intended to lessen the penalties against LGBTQ types. All of you who laughed at me in class for suggesting this will morph into pedophilia, you owe me an apology. You can email me both that and a sizable Amazon gift certificate to uncensoredunprofessor@gmail.com. Thank you. Dissociation. Again, you are your skin color. Where is this headed? Or maybe, why do I care? I care because I think suffering and confusion are bad for society. Existential decentering is hard on people, hard on families, hard on the collective cost of living. You see, when the suicide rate soars, the cost of insurance goes up. Amid widespread addictions, family violence soars and suicides go up. When people hate themselves and project that onto others, there is a societal cost. Greater violence, more folks put in prison, more families split apart. So where is this headed? Will we soon see the day when people at office parties begin introducing their pets as spouses? Or whatever the hell pronouns will be required then in lieu of spouses? Will we endure increased insurance premiums because legally people are allowed, dissociation, to marry their poodles? Will people be fired for snickering at coworkers who married their pig, a creature that was merely an emotional support partner but now has the full rights of a spouse? And here's the weird thing about dissociation. It can only go so far. Once the traditional form is taken down, then what will be attacked? And that's exactly why we keep seeing increasingly absurd devolutions occurring in society. The traditional Judeo-Christian American form must be ever more greatly disassembled into oblivion. But I ask, then what? Once deconstructionism is complete, what follows? Will we see the next generation disassemble the disassembly? What does dissociation look like when it targets itself, eats itself? I mean, it's not likely that it keeps cannibalizing itself until older traditional forms reappear and are renewed. I don't see that on the horizon. So then, what? Will ever newer special interest victim groups sprout like dandelions and turn on each other, as we're already seeing happen between feminists and transgenders? Dissociation. It cannot abide, will not abide. It will collapse. It will devour itself. But along the way, tremendous pain, unspeakable confusion, families shredded to near oblivion, churches, their souls poisoned, and perhaps with that dissociation, the nation itself. Just one theological takeaway: society cannot sustain itself by eating an angry diet of antipathy. Oh man, dissociation isn't yummy even for dessert. What does all this present for the remnant, the church? Opportunity. The imminent chaos will make people ever more hungry for truth, for centeredness, for holiness. That means the only recourse for the church is to dig into godly truth and go bold for Christ. There is no other hope. Okay, the naked thing in the moon. Oh man. Originally, I was going to give the front title of this episode as Das Ding an sich, which is German for the thing as such. But then I heard my lovely wife's words in the recesses of my brain. Ed, you really need to work on your show titles. You offer rich content, but your titles don't always entice people to listen. So, no das Ding an sich. Better, the naked thing. How do we encounter something as it is? Instead of viewing something or someone as an object for our commodity, how do we view them with wonder? How do we view them through more Christic eyes? How do we view them or that thing with integrity? How do we see something for what it actually is, das Ding an sich, the naked thing, as its own being, its own entity, for what it is? Wonder. The master painter splashed life with wonder, but only for those who have eyes to see. An ancient Jewish psalmist recognized the splashing wonder of life when he wrote Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and you are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. That psalmist gets it. Wonder is everywhere, internally, externally, even regarding our own beings. And he got it too, that God is everywhere, everywhere vibrating the frequency of life. God went before us. He endures hundreds of years after we die. He is the master painter, and he splashes his creation with wonder, but only for those who have eyes to see. And man, the psalmist sure could see it. Let's think about perception. How do we perceive God's creation? If the earth is, a mere cosmic accident, then there's no reason to wonder. It just is. If there's no being before the Big Bang, then life is meaningless, ultimately. But if this was planned, if this was intended, if this really was painted, then we have every reason to look for God's splash of wonder. And, my evangelical friends, we have every reason not only to believe this is headed somewhere, and I'm thinking here of my previous episode on providence, God directing everything to its ultimate good, his ultimate good and telos. We have every reason not only to be hopeful for our future as his own, we have every reason to look for the fingerprints, the wonder of the master painter now. Hey, you want to bless the show? Hit the subscribe button at YouTube or say a prayer for God's wisdom and timing. You see, too much of Christianity today is mere escapism. Stop, Ed. I just want to know that when I die, I'm going to go to heaven. If that is all this is for you, then you are an escapist. Jesus didn't come in order to get us to embrace escapism. No. Those who follow him resonate to his resonance. We get intuitively moved by his existential vibrations. Our spirit becomes attuned to his Holy Spirit. We're called to walk like he did. Following Paul in the book of Revelation, we're called to even have the aroma of Christ about our lives and to perceive life the way he did. So what do we draw from him on that? How can our lives be more beautiful, more wonder-filled? And before I get into that positively, allow me to make some qualifiers. First, we simply must stop only being creatures of utility. Now, this is something Pastor Mitchell and I discussed in my episode 182. We minimize Christianity when we make it only about us, about being saved, or about being blessed. For years I taught adult Sunday school. I would roll out some juicy, carefully prepared lesson, and folks frequently would say to me, okay, Ed, fair enough. But what difference does this make for me? We do, reducing truth to the level of utility. Is it useful for me? Will it make me happier? Usefulness. Now, look, I am a pragmatist. I actually love that element of American culture. But a downside to pragmatism, is it useful? Is that over time we become purchasers only. We assess things, we assess people, we assess reality by its usefulness to me. We become commodifiers. When you, on some doggy stroll around the hood, when you only view the tulips as something to give you joy or make you feel a fuzzy happy, you minimize the tulips. That you sentimentalize those for you ruins rather than embraces the tulips, the naked thing. Or when you engage a neighbor only because she interests you momentarily, you minimize her. That's objectification. We turn people and things into objects for our enjoyment, our use. Or here's another example of utility minimizing. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Immanuel Kant coined that phrase. Now, he was unpacking an entire philosophical horizon. He was contrasting that with other regnant philosophies. Today, it's a cause for trashing. People who say beauty is in the eye of the beholder are really saying nothing is important unless it's important to me. Beauty in the eye of the beholder, it's actually an arrogant perspective. Not only does it minimize the wonder of life, it reduces all discernment, sorting, prioritizing, evaluating. It reduces all discernment to the mawing, dank hole that is one's selfish little soul. It all gets sucked down into the hole of nothingness. Empty souls process das Ding on sich through a tiny keyhole of their tiny little souls. Please quit the perspective of utility. I have a second qualifier, but quickly, your social media help is one of the best ways to help me extend the show's reach. You can copy and paste URL feeds to your Twitter or Instagram, or you can share my Facebook show posts. Those who've done that recently, Brandon B., Hannah M., Victor S., Scott M., and Colleen S. You guys, thank you so much. Hey, I've got an offer for you.
A shiny new car.
No. But I would be smitten to have you on the UU support team. So, how would you like a lovely blue and white uncensored unprofessor coffee cup? Or 3. You'd be able to enjoy your hot Java in a UU mug while you listen to UU ramblings. How dat, you say? By making a frankincense or myrrh pledge at Patreon. Frankincense, $10 per month. That'll get you 2 mugs. A myrrh membership, $20 per month. I'll send you 3 mugs, free shipping. Patreon. Thanks, you guys. Qualifier number 1, we got to stop with the being creatures of utility. Qualifier number 2, oh, my listener. Sometimes I say things knowing all the while that it is pointless. If my vocation is to chisel your mental granite, if my job is to help shape the granite that is your mind, there are just some things that are not likely to work, not be taken up, leaving no discernible difference. Instead of me chiseling your granite, it's rather like I'm peeing on that granite. In the end, there will be no decipherable impact. But here goes. This one is, well, a sucker punch to my gut. Evangelicals, would or could you please stop with the, well, it's all gonna burn anyway, attitude. Recently I read a genuinely sweet-hearted actress utter this sentiment. This world is not our home. It really doesn't matter. It's sort of like saying, it's all gonna burn. It's not our home. But actually, from a biblical perspective, Sorry to bring a biblical perspective to bear during a podcast for thinking Christians. From a biblical perspective, this is our home. God created earth for us. He created us to live on this planet. He sent His Son to become Lord and Savior of this planet. He intends to redeem our bodies and this planet. It will participate in the end of history's resurrection. This planet, Earth, is going in the resurrection to become the new temple for Christ, His very throne, His very existence. Abba does not hate anything that He created. He does not intend to ultimately abandon anything that He has created. When we take a, "oh well, it's all going to burn anyway" attitude, then we dismiss the wonder, the glory of the naked thing as a quality of God's handiwork. The master painter did not splash this world with wonder so we would dismiss it as secondary to our salvation in some disembodied heaven. Ugh, dearie, me oh my. Oh, and 2 Peter 3:7, God will destroy the earth with fire. That's analogic for judgment, right? When we get baptized with fire, that is, the work of the Holy Spirit comes upon us, we're judged by God. Our bodies are not burned to a crisp. So there's a couple specific qualifiers for 21st American Christians. Let's stop being mere creatures of utility and let's stop dissing God's creation as something all going to be burned up in insignificance. Okay, let me put this into the positive. How can we live more wonder-filled lives? How can we view creation with theological lenses? Answer: view it as a gift. Now, careful. I didn't say a gift to you. No, view it as an unnecessary entity, a gift from God. What do I mean? Well, for starters, the pelican, the mint field, the praying mantis, it didn't have to exist. It's not ontologically necessary. It could have easily not have existed. The entire species or genus might not have existed. Who's to say that butterflies simply had to exist by necessity? The entire species or category might not have existed, but also the one in front of you, the naked thing, the thing or the object or the creature or the entity or the pair of eyes that presents itself to you, might not have existed. It is, therefore, a gift. Yes, it's a gift that you can see, physically see, but it is itself a gift. Apart from God's pleasure, it would not be alive, it would not exist. Apart from God's design, it would not be colored the way it is. Apart from God's providence, it would not poignantly smell like it does. Oh, and oh goodness. Remember when you were a child? Remember how magical it was to explore things, to examine things, to sit and relish in the midst of things? No one taught you to say so, but you experienced it as a gift. You knew it was magical. You knew it was extraordinary. Those honeybees that me and my two brothers caught with one of Mom's canning jars, amazing. Those fresh off the vine blackberries that never, ever, ever taste so sweetly mellow from the store, they are an olfactory gift. Those gray spackled clouds woven with hues of blue and purple, those don't have to exist. They are a gift to whomever will. But only for those who have eyes to see. View it as a gift. Be open. Be on the alert to encounter the many gifts Yeshua has loaded into your life. And one more before In science-y fashion, I move to Dear Luna. Recognize that the gift before you is an expression of the infinite. David Bentley Hart talks about this at length in his book on beauty. Our secular worldview has gutted us of wonder.
I have become comfortably numb.
Secularism, the vacuous notion that this or that or any of it exists beyond the purview of God, that all destroys awe. But truth? That Siamese cat is an expression of the finite. That rainbow trout, an expression of he who exists in eternity as eternity. See that trout as an expression, not an expression of necessity. God did not have to make that. He didn't create to fill some personal need. No, that naked thing is an expression of overflowing. The master painter paints, and he leaves his paintings all over the planet. Now again, let me be careful. I'm not saying the rainbow trout is somehow God himself. We Christ followers are not pantheists. Or still more, that speckled trout is not a lesser or little God. We Christ followers are not polytheists. So what is that rainbow trout? A rainbow trout. It is in itself a rainbow trout. So appreciate it for what it is, the naked thing presenting itself to you. And if you'll perceive life as both a gift and an expression of infinity, you'll unquestionably live in awe and wonder. And awe and wonder, wow, they produce gratitude. And gratitude produces joy. And joy produces charity, katatos, love in action, or how love is portrayed in most biblical stories. Yes, Jerry, it is possible to live more joy-filled lives. Okay, there's one half of your peanut butter and jelly Sammy, theology. What, then, about science? Hey, traipsing through an airport recently, I bought a cup of McDonald's coffee, and to my great delight, there was an offer printed on the cup. Get a free McCafe drink when you buy 5. Download our app. So? Well, I figure at my average 1 cup of Mickey D's coffee per every 2 years, I'll have a free McCafe in 10. Fun! I cannot wait. Winning? Guys, it's all about winning. Science-y stuff. First, some fun myths about the moon. One is that full moons make some people turn into werewolves or make others crazy. In fact, the words lunacy and lunatic both take Luna, the moon, as their derivative. Luna, Latin, goddess of the moon or moon. Me? I know that myth is just silly, although it's weird. I do need to shave my beard twice on the day of a full moon. Another myth? Aliens inhabit the moon. Well, duh, at least the dark side. And then third myth, oh goodness, this one is still around today, that the moon controls or affects fertility. That full moons account for upticks in birth rates. Now, statisticians say this one is not borne out. Still others? They say that more babies are in fact conceived when a naked moon appears on the horizon. Fourth myth, that the moon is a hollow spaceship. H.G. Wells in his sci-fi book, The First Men in the Moon, made that myth famous. Or a fifth myth, maybe the most famous myth in America about the moon? We never went there. The Apollo moon landings were faked by NASA in some studio. Yeah, right, Goofy, as if no one in the history of NASA would have ratted that one out. In fact, in 2002, Buzz Aldrin, he was the second man to walk on the moon in 1969, Aldrin punched a man in the face for suggesting that conspiracy. Here's a sixth myth, that a rabbit dwells on the moon. Just silly. But that's the power of suggestion. Hey, honey, would you go get me a carrot? Thank you, History.com, for those 6 myths. Okay, there's some myths. Let's work through some facts together. Compared to other planets' moons, Earth has a large moon. Ours is 1/4 the size of Earth. And at 1/4 Earth's size, the moon only has 1/6 the pull of gravity. There are also mountains, craters, and plains on the moon. They're all made of hardened lava, and if you can believe it, that lava experiences earthquakes. There are quakes on the moon. I guess that would make them moonquakes. Another fact, it takes the moon 27.3 days to orbit the Earth. A new moon is when the surface of the moon is entirely dark to us. The moon is waxing when the lighted portion grows larger, waning when it grows smaller. Similar to Earth, the moon has a molten core, and some PCUSA Presbyterians have formed a committee to see whether hell on the moon is the same temperature as hell on Earth. Other PCUSA Presbyterians report that committee work is hell on Earth. The moon and the Earth are about the same age. Do you know how? Their mom has a penciled growth chart on the kitchen wall up there.
That is so funny.
Another fact, it takes just about the same time for the moon to orbit the Earth as it does for the moon to make one full rotation. And interestingly, the same side of the moon always faces us. I feel so dumb that I did not think to ask or know that. More on that point? The gravitational pull between Earth and the moon helps to stabilize Earth's climate. The Privileged Planet DVD, which you guys should rent or watch on YouTube, the Privileged Planet DVD says, quote, "This gravitational pull ensures relatively temperate seasonal changes for the only climate in the solar system mild enough to sustain complex living organisms, the Earth." Amazing how much the moon is a blessing to the Earth. The moon is 238,855 miles away from Earth, or about how far your grandparents had to walk both ways to school in the snow, barefoot. Apollo 11, the first manned mission again in 1969, it took them 3 days, 3 hours, and 49 minutes to fly to the moon. Like the sun, the moon moves across our sky in an east to west direction. Another fact, on the bright side of the moon, temperatures can hit 261 degrees Fahrenheit, while on the dark side of the moon, it gets down to minus 243 degrees Fahrenheit, or what Eskimos call so cold you can freeze a burrito. Which reminds me of a sad tale I just read. On a cold winter's morning, a woman texted her husband, "Windows frozen, won't open." To which he texted back, "Gently pour some lukewarm water over it." 5 minutes later, she texted back to him, "Computer is really screwed up now." Thank you, upjoke.com. Still more facts. Earth's oceans, tides rise and fall based on lunar gravity. Or the moon has no atmosphere, so cosmic rays, meteorites, and solar winds all affect the moon's surface in grave ways, or compared to Earth anyway. And for those of you prone to worry, here's some more to foster your insomnia. The moon is moving away from the Earth at a rate of 1.5 inches per year. What's that mean? Well, in 50 billion years, the moon will take 47 days to orbit the Earth instead of 27.3 days. And interestingly, to date, 12 men have walked on the moon, all Americans. I know, that is such a microaggressive thing to note. I want to thank both National Geographic and Space Facts for those lunar tidbits. I think it's interesting to know that the moon has played an enormous role in helping astrophysicists understand both the reaches of the universe and how unique planet Earth is. Particularly, how do they know that, you say? Through eclipses. The Privileged Planet DVD says eclipses are giant natural experiments, end quote. You see, the moon is the perfect size in relation to the Earth for viewing the sun's orb during an eclipse. The moon's not too big to blot out the sun's outer atmosphere, but it's not too small so that we'd still be blinded by the light of the sun. And eclipses are why scientist, astrobiologist Guillermo Gonzalez and theologian Jay Richards say eclipses are why it's almost like we were meant to be able to not only see an eclipse, but use them to study more piercingly the entire universe. Eclipses help scientists variously to understand the upper layers of the sun's atmosphere. During totality of an eclipse, a rainbow light band called the flash spectrum appears when it's viewed through a prism, and scientists learned that through that helium was discovered at work in the universe. Eclipses help scientists understand how other stars, which are themselves suns, function. And on May 29th of 1919, a total eclipse helped to confirm Einstein's theory of relativity, that the sun's gravity bent the light from distant stars traveling toward the Earth at the angle predicted by Einstein. Scientist Guillermo Gonzalez says about eclipses, it's amazing. The one place that has observers is the one place in our galaxy that has the best eclipses. Thinking of eclipses, back in 2017, Tanya and me and my brothers and some friends drove to the Willamette Valley in Oregon to my sister, my mom and sister, my sister and mom and Mike's farm on the Willamette River. And we all went out and sat in a rye grass field in lawn chairs. It was located in the sweep of totality of darkness during the eclipse. The experience was spectacular. I'd seen partial eclipses before, but never one in totality. There was a strange feeling as the darkness crawled in over us. The eerie atmosphere as the animals began to quiet. The anticipation of the moon completely covering the face of the sun. And then that moment, how long does it last? 5 seconds? That moment of totality that creates a diamond flash. I'd never seen that before, and viewing it with my own eyes was truly, in the original sense of the word, awesome. It lit up my nervous system, felt miraculous. It gave me some understanding as to why the ancients would worship the sun or moon as gods. And that eclipse, it was an offering, an expression of the infinite. If God can do that with the stars, what can He do with your life? All of the 17 or so of us sat in that rye field in wonder and awe when we saw the diamond flash of that eclipse. And we all expressed gratitude for the moment, the miracle, the unprecedented experience. Gratitude, it's excellent motivation for caritas, love and action. Oh, and I wonder, will Jesus Himself be brighter than the diamond flash during a moment of totality? Wow. Gratitude, love, relishing the gift presented, enjoying the naked thing as an expression of the infinite. Well, there you go. Some theology and some science. A wonderful UU peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Thanks so much, you guys, for listening. Please go and turn your beautiful God-given brains on, everybody.